Do not scroll, do not skip, because this moment, this exact second that something made you pause and stay, was not random. Heaven does not do random. You were brought to this message because there is a word that has been prepared specifically for the person who has been underestimated, not just once, not just by one person, but consistently, repeatedly, by people who looked at your life and made a decision about your ceiling that they had no authority to make. Stay right here. Because what Archangel Michael is about to speak over your life is going to reach the exact place where the underestimation landed and replace what it left there with something that cannot be shaken. Something is different in the atmosphere around your life right now. You can feel it even if you cannot fully describe it. A shift that is quieter than dramatic, but deeper than anything surface level. Like something that has been compressed for a long time is beginning to expand. Like something that was held back is beginning to move. That feeling is not your imagination. It is heaven giving your spirit advance notice of what is already assembled in the invisible and preparing to arrive in the visible. And at the center of what is coming is a reversal so complete that the people who underestimated you are going to find themselves in an entirely different relationship with the truth of who you are. Do not move. Stay until the very end, because the part that is going to land deepest in your spirit is still ahead. You know what being underestimated feels like from the inside. Not the version that gets resolved quickly when you prove something and people update their assessment and move on. The sustained version, the kind that lives in a relationship or an environment or a family dynamic and does not resolve because the people doing the underestimating are too invested in their version of you to revise it when the evidence suggests they should. The kind where you have demonstrated something real and instead of being seen clearly, you are given a smaller explanation for it. You got lucky. The circumstances were right. Anyone could have done that. The kind where your consistency is invisible because it does not fit the story they have already filed you under. Maybe it was in your professional life. People in positions of authority who looked at your potential and saw less than was there, who gave opportunities to people with less ability because their ability was more legible, more familiar, more aligned with what those in power already believed success looked like, who passed over you not because you were not ready, but because they were not equipped to recognize readiness in the form it arrived in you. Maybe it was in your personal life. People who knew you longest and therefore believed they knew you most completely, not understanding that length of knowing and depth of knowing are not the same thing, who carried an image of you that was formed in your earliest seasons and never updated it to account for who you became through everything you went through. Maybe it was in your own community, your own circle, the people who should have been your most natural supporters, who underestimated not with cruelty, but with a casual confidence that was in some ways harder to bear than cruelty would have been. Because cruelty you can push against. Casual dismissal leaves nothing to push against. It simply occupies the space where recognition should be and makes the air feel thinner. Do not scroll. Archangel Michael says stay right here. What is being assembled for your life right now is a direct response to every moment of underestimation you absorbed. Stay until the end. Here is what you need to understand about why being underestimated is one of the most specific and intentional preparations heaven uses for the people it is about to elevate significantly. This is not comfort. This is not the reframing of a painful experience into something more palatable. This is a genuine spiritual principle that changes everything about how you interpret what you went through. The people who carried the most significant assignments in the history of faith were almost universally underestimated before they stepped into what they were carrying. David was so thoroughly underestimated by his own family that when the prophet came to anoint the next king, his father did not even think to call him in from the field. He was not considered a candidate by the people who knew him best. Joseph was underestimated so completely by his brothers that they believed selling him into slavery was a reasonable response to the threat his gifts represented. Esther was underestimated by an entire system that did not see a Jewish orphan girl as someone who carried the authority to save a nation. Gideon was hiding in a wine press when the angel arrived and called him a mighty warrior, a title so far from how Gideon saw himself in that moment that his first response was to question whether the angel had found the right person. In every case, the underestimation was not an obstacle to the assignment, it was part of the preparation for it. Because being underestimated strips away one of the most dangerous things that can attach itself to a person with a significant calling, which is the need for external validation as the fuel for their movement. If you are celebrated before you are formed, if recognition arrives before character is built, if people's high expectations precede the development of the internal substance required to meet them, the recognition becomes a weight rather than a support. It creates a performance dynamic where the fear of failing to meet expectations is the engine, and engines run on fear produce unstable results. But when you have been underestimated, when you have moved forward in the absence of external celebration, when you have built and developed and persisted without the fuel of other people's confidence in you, you discover something. You discover that you have a source of fuel that does not depend on anyone else's assessment of your potential. You discover that the movement was never about proving something to them. It was always about the assignment itself. And that discovery, that separation of your purpose from other people's opinions of your purpose, is one of the most important things a person can carry into significant elevation. You carry it now because the underestimation required it, and what you are about to step into requires exactly this. Stay with me. Do not skip. What Archangel Michael is releasing over you is still building toward the word that is going to change how you see everything. I want to talk about the fear, because the title of this message names it, and it deserves to be addressed with the full weight it carries. They underestimated you, and now they fear you. Not fear in the sense of threat or danger. Fear in the sense of the specific internal experience that arrives when someone realizes that the person they dismissed was carrying something far more significant than their dismissal accounted for. The fear of being wrong in a way that costs something. The fear of watching a person rise to a level that their own underestimation tried to cap. The fear that arrives when the categories you used to organize the world around you stop holding the things you put in them. That fear is beginning to form in the people who underestimated you. Some of them are already feeling it, even if they cannot name it. A discomfort when your name comes up in conversation. An awkwardness when they encounter evidence of where your life is going that does not align with where they decided your life was going. A subtle urgency in how they respond to information about you. A need to process it quickly and file it somewhere that does not require them to substantially revise the story they have been telling. The fear is not punishment. It is the natural experience of encountering something that exceeds your framework for it. And your life is beginning to exceed every framework they built for it. Not because you set out to exceed their frameworks, but because you followed an assignment that was never limited by their ability to see it. And assignments from heaven have a scope that human underestimation simply cannot contain. To receive what Archangel Michael is releasing over your life right now, go to the comments and type "They underestimated the wrong one." Let that declaration be the agreement between your spirit and what heaven is confirming in this moment. Do it now and then come back. The specific word about what is coming in your life is still ahead, and you do not want to miss it. Let me be specific about what is loading for your life right now, because general encouragement has its place, but this message is not general. It was sent for your specific situation, and the word being released over you is specific. The first thing loading for you is recognition from the right sources. Not necessarily from the people who underestimated you, though some of them will revise and some of that revision will produce belated recognition that carries its own meaning. But more importantly, recognition from the sources that are positioned to actually move your life forward, decision makers who have the authority to open the doors that your assignment requires. People with platforms and influence who are going to encounter what you carry and understand immediately that it belongs in a larger space. Connections that have been prepared in heaven and are now being released in the natural. Connections that carry the specific kind of recognition that does not come from people who have watched you long and decided you are more than they thought, but from people who encounter you fresh and see immediately what was always there. This recognition is going to arrive differently than you might expect, not always with fanfare, sometimes quietly and then suddenly consequentially. A conversation that seems ordinary and then opens something significant. An introduction that does not look like much at the moment it happens, and then turns out to be the turn in the road that everything after it is measured from. A message or an opportunity or an encounter that comes through an unexpected channel at an unexpected time. Pay attention to the unexpected. Heaven moves through it specifically because the unexpected cannot be manufactured and therefore cannot be mistaken for anything other than what it is. The second thing loading for you is the release of gifts that have been held in reserve. There are dimensions of what you carry that have not yet been expressed because the season did not provide the context for their expression. Gifts that were present but not activated. Capacities that were real but not yet called upon. Depths that existed but had not yet found the circumstance that would draw them out. The coming season is going to provide those circumstances. You are going to find yourself in situations that call for something from you that surprises even you. And in the responding to those situations, in the reaching for what is needed and discovering it is there, you are going to understand that the preparation was more thorough than you knew, and the equipping was more complete than the season of underestimation suggested. The people who underestimated you saw the version of you that the previous season made visible. They did not see what was in reserve. They will now, not all at once. In the specific and sequential way that God reveals what was always present, but not yet required. And each revelation is going to be its own confrontation with the inadequacy of the assessment they made. The third thing loading for you is a repositioning in the spaces where you operate. The place you have been occupying, the level at which you have been functioning, is about to change, not because you campaigned for it, not because you outmaneuvered the people who tried to hold you at a lower level, but because God repositions what is aligned with a higher assignment. You cannot keep a chosen person at a level their assignment has exceeded indefinitely. The pressure of the assignment against the container that is too small for it eventually produces a change, and that change is happening now. The repositioning may look like a literal change of environment, a new position, a new location, a new context in which you are operating. Or it may look like a shift in how you are perceived and therefore engaged with in the environment you are already in. Either way, the level at which your gifts are being received is about to change in a way that is visible and measurable and impossible to explain away as circumstance alone. Do not scroll. Stay right here. The word that is going to settle something permanently in your spirit is still coming. Do not miss it. I want to speak to something that the underestimation may have deposited in you that needs to be addressed before you step fully into what is coming. Because being underestimated over a sustained period of time does something to a person even when they resist it, even when they maintain their belief in their own assignment, even when they continue to move forward. The sustained message that you are less than what you believe you are has a way of creating an internal negotiation, a quiet ongoing argument between what you know in your spirit and what the accumulated weight of other people's assessments has been trying to establish. And in that negotiation, without full awareness, many people begin to make small concessions. They begin to present a smaller version of their gifts in spaces where they expect to be underestimated because full expression feels too vulnerable when the environment has historically not received it well. They begin to preemptively minimize what they bring to conversations and rooms so that the gap between what they offer and what people are expecting is not so visible. They begin to qualify their confidence with disclaimers that the confidence does not actually require, but that the experience of underestimation has made to feel like social safety. These concessions are understandable. They are the adaptations of someone navigating an environment that has not been calibrated for what they carry. But they are concessions that the coming season does not need and cannot afford. Because what is coming requires full expression. The doors that are opening were designed for the unedited version of your gifts. The connections that are forming need the unqualified version of your confidence. The repositioning that is happening has been sized for the actual scope of your assignment, not the reduced version that underestimation pressured you toward. Archangel Michael says, release the concessions. In this new season, walk into every room as the full version of what God made you, not with arrogance. Arrogance is compensation for insecurity, and you are not going into this season insecure. with the quiet, settled confidence of someone who knows what they carry and knows where it came from and knows that its value is not determined by whether any particular room receives it well. That confidence is not something you have to perform. It is something you have already built through the very process of moving forward while underestimated. You have already proven to yourself that you can function without external validation. Now function fully. Now bring everything. Now stop making the gift smaller to fit the container of other people's expectations, and let the gift be what it is, and let the containers that cannot hold it simply be replaced by ones that can. Share this message with someone who has been underestimated and who needs to know that the underestimation is not the verdict. Someone who has been functioning at a fraction of what they carry because the environment has not made full expression feel safe. Someone who needs permission to stop negotiating with the low expectations that have been directed at them and to step into the full scope of what God placed in them. When you carry this word for others, Archangel Michael carries your breakthrough forward. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another message prepared for your season. Heaven is releasing specific words for specific people in specific seasons, and you want to be positioned to receive every one that carries your name, my beloved child. You have stayed through this entire message, and in staying you received something your spirit needed more than you may have understood when you stopped scrolling. A word spoken directly into the specific experience of being looked at and assessed as less than you are, a confirmation that the assessment was wrong. Not slightly wrong, not wrong in a way that requires some nuance and some credit to the assessors, wrong. Fundamentally, comprehensively, consequentially wrong, in a way that the coming season is going to make impossible to continue to maintain. They underestimated you. They looked at what God assembled in you, and they drew a conclusion that the evidence around them simply did not support. They saw the process and mistook it for the product. They saw the becoming and mistook it for the sealing. They saw the season of hiddenness and mistook it for the permanent state. And they built their assessment on a misreading so significant that the correction of it is going to require a complete reorientation of everything they thought they understood about your life and your potential and your place in the spaces you are moving into. And now something is happening that they did not calculate when they made their assessment. The person they underestimated is rising, not loudly, not with the need to announce the rising to the people who missed it, but rising with the specific quiet authority of someone who always knew this was coming and is therefore not surprised by it, only grateful for it, rising into the gifts that were always there, rising into the connections that were always being prepared, rising into the level that was always the actual level, not the one they assigned. And they are beginning to feel it, not see it fully yet. Feel it, in the way the atmosphere around a person changes before the visible change arrives, in the way something shifts in the quality of their presence before the circumstances catch up to the shift. They are feeling that something is different, that the person they had filed under a particular heading is not staying in that file, that the assessment they made is no longer holding the reality it was meant to hold. The fear that is forming in them is not about you, it is about themselves, about the cost of being wrong in a significant way, about what it means for their own judgment that they looked at something this real and saw something this small. That fear is their process. You do not need to manage it or address it or wait for it to resolve into something you can use. You simply need to keep rising, keep moving into the full expression of what God placed in you. Keep walking through the doors that are opening. Keep receiving the recognition that is coming. Keep building with the gifts that are being released. Keep positioning yourself in the spaces that were always meant to hold you. The underestimation is over, not because they revised it, because you outgrew it, because what God was building could not be contained by what they believed, because assignments from heaven do not require human agreement to manifest, because the version of you that has come through everything you came through is not a person that can be underestimated successfully anymore. You are too visible now, too clearly, undeniably, moving in something real for the assessment to hold. They underestimated you, and now they know, and what they know is just the beginning of what they are going to witness. Rise. The season is here. The gifts are ready. The doors are open. The recognition is coming. The repositioning is happening. Rise. All the way, without concession, without apology, without the edited version of what God made you. Just rise.